Hi, I'm Greta Assange, and I'm a professor of art here at FCCJ South, and I teach design and printmaking, and I'm new here this semester. So today what I'm going to demonstrate is printmaking, a method of printmaking called intaglio, and it's an Italian word that means literally to engrave. And so what we do in intaglio is we work with metal plates and we engrave images into the metal. And it's different from other art processes in that you make your image on one thing and then your final product is printed onto a piece of paper or some other medium. So you're actually creating a plate, or what we sometimes call a matrix, that you will then print. So what I'm going to do is show you how we go about inking the plates and getting the ink into the image, and I'm going to show you running it through the press so you can see the final product. So in intaglio you can use copper plates or you can use zinc plates, but for this particular print I'm using copper. And so I've gotten to a stage on this plate where I'm wiping the ink off, but I'll show you what happens before that on this test plate that I have. And there are lines that have been engraved in here with acid, which is a sort of complicated method, but that's how these lines were imprinted on the plate. And what we do, I have a selection of colors that I've mixed, and you use simple, very technical piece of equipment called a matte chip that we scrape a little bit of the ink and we scrape it on top of the plate. And so we actually push ink into the lines of the plate. So what we're printing is what's in the plate and not on the surface of the plate. So you can see it's starting to make those lines show up a little bit. And so I've already done that here. I've scraped the ink into the plate. And what I'm going to do now is wipe the surface. We have these different cloths. It's basically cheesecloth. And it wipes the ink off of the surface of the plate. And since in intaglio we're printing what's engraved in the plate, we don't need all this ink on the surface. So we wipe it off so that all that's left is the ink that's in the plate itself. We use a series of dirty cloths and then get cleaner and cleaner so that you keep wiping off more and more of the ink. See, the ink's pulling off of the surface. And all the ink staying in these deep lines on the plate. So I have one that's already wiped and we're going to print here at the press. So you have to have clean hands at the press. That's the rule. So I have a plate that's been inked and the ink on the surface has been wiped off, so there's ink in the engraved parts of the plate. So I'm going to set my paper on top of the plate. And this is going to be a two-plate print, so I want to make sure my paper stays in the same place, so I'm going to tape it down. Okay. And then to help protect the press and to also help push the paper into the lines of the plate, we use these blankets called felts. Sort of smooth that over here. And we use 3 of them on this press. You have to smooth out all the wrinkles so that you don't get any wrinkles on your paper. It'll print onto your paper. Okay. In this particular press, the roller goes up and down to push harder or lighter on the plate. And I know from experience that it's too high up. So I'm going to turn this crank, which will lower the roller closer to the bed of the press. There we go. So that's one side. And then we have to lower this side as well. All right, now that my roller's in place, I'm going to push this through the roller, and it's going to essentially smush the paper, which is wet, into the grooves of the plate, and the ink will then transfer onto the paper. That's what we're hoping is going to happen at least. So start by cranking the roller. You can feel it when the plate goes under the roller. It gets a little harder to push. Printmakers have good arm muscles. Okay. And then this is the most exciting part, is when you get to pull the blankets back and see that it printed. So I can see that it pushed down on the paper. There's a little bit of an edge here. So what I do is I sort of peek to make sure that it printed, and it did. So I'm going to pull this paper back, and we have an image. And another interesting thing about printmaking is that it's reversed. So whatever's on your plate prints reversed on your paper. So this is the background for the plate that we were inking earlier. So I'm going to leave this here and remove this plate. And then I'm going to get my other plate and set it in the same place, and it's going to print on top of this image. So in printmaking, we have lots of really fancy tools, like these specially made toilet paper rolls. They're not really, we just use them, but and they're really useful in wiping the edges of the plate. And so right before you print, you wipe the edges of the plate so that you get any ink off of the sides. So we're full of these really fancy tools. We use old toothbrushes, chips of mat board, and toilet papers may be the best. So, all right. Set this plate down. And I've made a guide for myself so I know where the other plate was. And I sort of line this one up on these little marks so that it lines up in the same place. And then I'm going to let my paper go back down. Put my blankets down. And then I'm going to run it back through the press. Now we're going to pull the blankets back, and we're going to see what we've got. All right. So now what we have is an image that's a composite of the two plates. It has the color that I printed the first time, and then some of the finer lines that I printed back on top of it. So this is a two-plate print. And that's it. That's the magic of printmaking.